Ahoy there, Lorcana fans. Welcome back to Camp Quest. I'm Ian. You know, Lorcana has gotten just a little bit more expensive than it usually is because Whispers in the Well had just so many awesome, powerful new legendaries that are influencing the meta and showing up in all of the tournament decks. However, I know some of you out there may be new or returning players, and you're wondering, where can I start that is a affordable starting point, and you want to be able to have something that is not just going to be a deck that can sort of tinker around and have some fun, but that will be putting you on a path towards a meta list over time so that you can trade for, rip packs, or purchase the singles you need to take your deck to that set champs, to that DLC, whatever tournament you want to play in. Or maybe you just want to have a deck that can compete, but you don't really intend to ever buy into the more expensive sides of the game, and that's okay. So what I've done here today is I've built 4 decks. I've taken 4 existing meta decks and budgetized them so that they are a little bit more affordable starting points for new or returning players. So let's go ahead and get started with Amethyst Steel. All right, so starting off, we're taking a look at Amethyst Steel. This was a list from TFM Melissa at the TFM 3K. So as you can see, there are some expensive cards here in the list that are going to be a bit prohibitive for new players. The good news is Amethyst Steel is a very flexible, very powerful, and straightforward list. It is one of the ink combinations that I always steer new players towards, especially players who are new, who do not have a ton of experience with these types of games, right? The sort of the board trading games like this, or Hearthstone, or Magic, or anything like that. You know, if you get players coming from different kinds of structures like Pokemon or something, where they have to learn the basics of board interaction, then this is usually something I steer them towards because it's relatively streamlined, right? You can see that we have 4 copies of Dumbo. These are around $35 a piece. We've got 3 copies of Hades, again around $35, and 2 copies of Demona. These are like $20 to $25, but again, all of that adds up to be several $100s worth of cards just to build this list. And yes, it's an awesome list that did well. I believe it won the 3K, but we don't really actually have to do that to play it this specific way in order to have a functioning deck that you can take to League and compete with. So what I've done here is I have taken a few of these more expensive cards out and replaced them with things that I think are serviceable replacements. Okay, so this is a budget version. It's about $60. And to be honest, like, most of that money is wrapped up in these docks. Now, I've done this video, or a video like this, for last set. It's going to be some similarities. And the thing that I always tell people is to just go ahead, if you're new to the game and you like steel, go ahead and buy 4 copies of dock. And the reason why is it is the equalizer, the great equalizer in terms of building decks. You can build pretty much any aggressive steel deck just by having 4 copies of Dock to serve as a draw engine. It's a powerful card that when you play it, you discard your hand to draw 2 cards, but obviously you are going to try to play it by emptying your hand and having it be the last card in your hand that you play, so that it effectively is a cheap card that says draw 2 cards. And it's actually pretty achievable because we keep the curve relatively low. A lot of relatively cheap things, you can see we top our curve out up here at 5. And so when I do these videos, again, like I said, with Doc, but also with Elsa, we're just trying to, anything that I put in a deck like this that costs more than $1 or $2 is something that I believe is worth investing in as a player, because it's going to show up almost ubiquitously in most decks, or many decks at least, and that's the case here with Elsa as well. Now you can see, compared to the other list, we have no Dumbos, we have no Genies. These are like $9, $10, and I think we can get away with them. These are a great card that you would want to include if you had them, but if you don't have them, we have a very serviceable replacement here in Dolores Madrigal, which is a 4-cost inkable 3/3, the quest for 2. Solid stats, especially solid aggressive stats. And what it does is, whenever it comes into play, if your opponent has an exerted character, you'll get to draw a card. Genie comes in and draws a card. Genie's better. It has evasive. It's also quests for 2 and has a 2/4 stat line, which, depending on the situation, can sometimes be better or worse. But ultimately, they both draw cards. This one is conditional, but it's also inkable. So if your opponent is not playing characters, you can always ink it and play something else, right? you can see our early game is very, very similar, right? We don't have the Calhouns. Again, those cards are, a little bit on the pricier end, usually around $5-ish a piece. I think if you have them, of course, you include them. And again, these decks are not supposed to be full replacements, but rather like they're a starting point, and then you can upgrade them as you collect the cards that are in the more conventional meta lists. And there's a lot of great placeholders here, right? Because we have the Black Herons. These are a solid uncommon from the new set, a 2-cost 3/3. But unlike the Calhouns, we have Raja here that we can play with a 2-cost 3/3 as well. It has Vanish, which is a little bit of a downer keyword. It's a little bit worse than Black Heron, so if you ever have the choice between the two, you'll always play Black Heron because it doesn't have the downside, but it still puts those massive 3/3 stats for 2 out onto the board in a timely fashion. It trades up nicely into other things. And we have this Mim here, which can give all of your other cards Challenger +1, just to fix a little bit of math as we get into the mid game. All the 1-drops are the same, and all the 1-drops do nicely with Madam Mim, right? The Hook challenges up into 4. The Palace Guard is already a 1/4 for 1, which is crazy. It becomes a 2/4 for 1. This Diablo actually can hit with something. So you can see how Madam Mim, can fix a little bit of math here and there. We just don't want to play too many of them, so it's just a 2-cost. We get into the mid game. There's a lot of 3s in here, and there's a lot of great 3-drop options. We've instead opted to take the deck a little bit more aggressive as opposed to a more attrition-based game plan that the other deck can do because it has cards like Hades and Demona and Dumbo, right? These are all card draw cards that have some sort of other upside. And here we're just trying to focus on taking value trades with our opponents. So, attacking into things and hopefully getting our things to live, or getting 2 cards down for every 1 card that we lose, right? So we've got just stats galore. We have a 3/4 Cheshire Cat, which is an awesome new Whisper. You can boost it to move 2 damage across either your characters or your opponent's characters to any of your opponent's characters. And so obviously you can run your Black Heron to something, take 2 damage on it, and then your Cheshire Cat can move that 2 damage to eliminate something else. This is great for taking out shift targets like Baby Clarabelles and Baby Webbies and stuff like that. So this can be really nice for that, or for hitting into something big and moving damage from something else onto it to finish it off. And then we've got our suite of 3-cost 4/4s. The Giant Cobra, of course, also has Vanish, but can serve as reach to get you a little bit of extra lore. And the Lexington can attack evasives. It just has the downside that you have to have a low hand size, which you almost always do, in order for it to ready. So just be aware of that. Pete is going to stop actions, and so this is a really powerful card for playing the more aggressive role, because if you expect your opponent to use an action on the following turn, and this takes a little bit of practice to time out, but if you expect your opponent to use any actions or songs on the following turn, you can slam it and delay that by a whole turn, allowing you to get a little bit of more questing before your guys, get inked by a spooky sight, or making sure your opponent cannot sing their Strength of a Raging Fire before you do. I already mentioned Dolores, but the last one I want to mention is Mayor Winddancer, because we've trimmed out some of the uninkables in the case of Calhouns aren't in here, Genies aren't in here. We're playing Mayor Winddancer because it's a ridiculous 5/7 stat block, and because we don't have a whole lot better of things to spend our uninkables on, we'd like to have this much stats. It's a fantastic character to come down, start taking trades or questing, because your opponent really does not want to have to throw 2 or 3 things into it. Almost all of the threats in the game do not kill it in one go. With that 7 defense is a really critical number. There's a lot of 6 attack and 5 attack characters out there right now. 7 is a little bit harder to deal with. And then, of course, we can also use it to sing things. And we have Strength of Raging Fire and He Hurled His Thunderbolt. Again, I've got 2 Fire the Cannons as well. We're sort of splitting this up because we don't have quite as much card draw, so we don't want to go too hard in on the He Hurled His Thunderbolts because they can get stuck in the hand. So we are focusing on sort of diversifying our removal. We've got a little bit of early game for Fire the Cannons. We have our Strengths because they're a core steel card worth investing in. And then 2 Thunderbolts. These are very powerful, but again, you really never want to have 2 or more in your hand at the same time because they can be challenging to get out of your hand, even though they are quite good. So that's Amethyst Steel. Let's go ahead and move on now to talking about Amber Emerald. This is Circle of Life, so or Big Dogs, as I like to call it. So this is actually a really cool one, which is surprisingly close to affordable. The main thing with this deck, which is sort of a combo mid-range deck, It's very explosive. It's a little bit challenging to play. This is a really cool deck for new players who come from a card game background, because you're going to feel very empowered when you play this to make some very awesome, cool plays, to outsmart your opponent, to predict what your opponent's doing. This is a very good deck to start on if you are an experienced trading card game player, and you want to jump into something that is going to reward your experience. That being said, it is punishing, and if you play it wrong, you're going to lose a lot of games until you figure it out. So the idea here with big dogs, and this is a list from a 10K, I believe it was a top 8 list. So I'm just pulling lists from other tournaments. These are not necessarily the ones that I fully endorse as the ultimate meta list, because I'm not trying to show you my lists. I'm trying to show you that these are the lists that are winning right now, and that have results behind them, so you can understand what I'm talking about when I'm telling you that they're meta decks that you can budgetize. So this came from the Disney Lorcana Sharp Gaming 10K, and I believe there was another one very similar to it that placed at this in the same weekend. I've been playing a similar list to this, and what you're trying to do is you are trying to get some of your early game characters out. You're trying to go wide on the board while disrupting their hand, and you're doing that through Mowgli and Ursula. You can actually have pseudo ramp from Pluto and Huey, which are going to help you cheat out characters that are more expensive. These are similar to like some of the mana spud characters you might see in Magic, right? The 1/1s that you can tap to generate a mana or whatever. I didn't play Magic. I'm just aware that it exists. So you can use these as effective ramp, which is really nice in a meta where blue is very, very dominant, and you're competing with ramp decks. But these actually put a body on board as well, and they're going to let you cheat out early game characters above curve. So you can bring out things like this Prince Philip, which is going to serve as a shift target. We'll talk about that in a second. This Raja, my favorite play in this deck is 1-drop Pluto. He's going to, on turn 2, tap himself to reduce the cost of the next character you play by 1, and then you play this Raja as a bodyguard, a 3/4 bodyguard. There is almost nothing in the game right now that is going to be able to take that out immediately, which basically allows you to use your Pluto on the next turn to bring in a 4-drop on turn 3. And so, of course, for 4-drops, we have some great options here. We have the Mickey Mouse, which gives your Amber characters +2 defense, and it's going to, if you have 2 Amber characters or more out, you can have Singer 8 with this. And so you can kind of see where we're going. We're putting out some of these big threats, but what we're not doing is aggressively questing with them. We don't want to be losing our characters. We want to leave them out on the board for a few reasons. The first reason is that we want to assemble 8 or more total cost on our board so we can sing together our 2 big songs. Under the Sea, which deals with other aggro decks, and Circle of Life, which can bring back any character from the discard pile for free. These are sing together cards. So unlike other songs, which requires 1 character to sing it if it has that cost or higher, these are sing together so you can combine multiple characters to sing it as a group, which is very powerful, especially when you're putting in tanky cards, right? Like, Raja and Mickey Mouse, or warded cards like Prince Philip or Scar, so that they're going to be around. You also have the ability to shift in a 7-drop Clarabelle, which is going to draw you cards. But the big thing here is that Circle of Life is only really useful if you have cards in your discard pile. To help with that, we have Bobby Zimmerowski, lets you draw and discard a card, which is a tactical sort of put the best character that you might want to bring back from the graveyard, put that in the discard pile with Bobby. But you also have Tramp, and this is the big one. This is one of the other reasons why you don't want to be board trading if you don't have to. You want to assemble a wide board because Tramp costs 1 less for every character you have in play. And so obviously what you can do is discount all of those characters, discount itself from all those characters. And then when he comes into play, he also lets you draw and discard based on the number of characters that you had in play, or based on his discount number. So if you have 5 characters in play, he costs 2, and when he comes into play, you draw 5 cards and discard 5 cards of your choice, which fuels your discard pile to set up your Under the Sea. It also allows you to dump those cards that you want, like the Clarabelle or the Stitch or the Prince Philip, so that you can tactically retrieve whichever one you need in the moment from Circle of Life. Now, what is interesting here is we're also able to leverage the Malicious, Mean, and Scary and Prince Philip combo in a really effective way, because we don't actually have to spend 9 to bring Prince Philip in. We don't even actually have to spend 6 to shift him, though we can, and that's why we're playing the shift target. But we can play a Malicious, Mean, and Scary, put 1 damage on everything, and then sing Circle of Life to bring it back from the discard pile. It's very, very effective. So that is how this deck wants to play. You may be asking, well, what's so expensive about this deck? It's really just one thing. It's Clarabelle. And I'll be honest, Clarabelle is a fantastic card in this deck. It's really great to be able to shift it onto your 1-drop Clarabelle if you don't have the rest of this set up yet, and refill your hand, especially against blue decks that are just sitting there inking and passing, playing ramp and passing for the first 3 turns, right? So if you can get this out, especially if you can go like, Pluto, Raja, Clarabelle, like bring it in on turn 3 or 4, or usually turn 4. Turn 3 you can do, but it's a stretch. If you can do that, you're usually in a really good spot. And so it's because the main way that they're going to want to deal with this is going to be like Under the Sea or Spooky Sight, and you've just insulated yourself from that by getting this Clarabelle into play. So yeah. That's how this deck is set up at the highest level, and there's still plenty of experimentation to be done with this. I don't think that this is the perfect 60 count, but it is a really good starting place and one that I've been having success with. So if we cut the Clarabelles out, here's what we get. We get a $65 deck that, again, I think experienced players of TCGs that are coming into the game and they want to give it a try, but they don't want to break the bank. This is an awesome mid-range combo deck that they're going to have a lot of fun with. We lean a little bit harder into the Stitch in order to facilitate our card draw. This becomes our key Circle of Life target. The biggest thing, of course, unfortunately, that we're missing from the other deck is the ability to shift a Clarabelle in, which is really nice. We have a couple ways of sort of presenting an alternative line to that. The first, and the one that I've shown you here, is with trimming our 4 of those out, and we're going 2 Finnick, and we're going 2 Yzma. The Yzma is going to help get more things in the discard pile, because you're a little more reliant on getting Stitches in the discard pile to serve as your card draw target from Circle of Life. And then Finnick is actually going to serve as a little bit of spot removal against some of the tempo decks that are out there, especially some of the purple decks that are going to be playing things like Genies. You can just stall a turn by getting a Finnick down, bouncing a Genie, etc. The other thing you can do, and the one that does add some Uninkables to the mix, but can still work out, is to run the 1-drop Lady. And then run the 5-drop Uninkable Lady. Again, it adds some Uninkables, which does hurt your consistency a little bit because you have so many Uninkables from Pluto and Huey and Under the Sea. But the 5-drop Shift Lady adds in the ability to shift onto the 1-drop Lady and not just pull 1-drops back from the discard pile that you may be dumped with Bobby or a Tramp or something, but it allows you to have that shift into a song, which can be very, very powerful and is the main thing you're missing without Clarabelle. But we're basically from this list, we're just filling out all of these 3-ofs in the mid game with our count of Clarabelle. And so, and then the 1-drop Clarabelles we're breaking up into Finnicks and Yzmas. And so we're getting another copy of Prince Philip Shift Target, another copy of this Mickey and Scar and Philip. So that's what we're doing here. And again, for this deck, being so explosive, being so intricate and fun to play and rewarding for your skill and your ability to learn which lines are better into which decks, for $65, I don't think you're going to get something that is more intricate and skill expressive than this right now. So definitely one of my big recommendations. Now let's go the other direction and go with something that I think is one of the best decks right now to hand to a new player. Maybe not a kid who's net new, but hand to a newer player that just wants to learn a specific sort of line and run with it. And that's going to be Chroma Dogs, or this one. This is from this weekend as well, from the TFM 3K. This is piloted by Royce. This is what they're calling Dogpile. But yeah, this is what I've long been calling Chroma Dogs because of the reliance on Chromacon. It is a straight aggressive deck. Now, there's still some intricacies that you get, but those are things that can be taught more so than you can sort of just write out for your opponent the ideal lines and write out for the player. If you're handing this to a new player, or if you're learning this for the first time, you can kind of like math out and chart out your sort of like main strategy and just sort of roll with it. But the idea here, this is very similar to the Sea Dogs deck that I won a set champs with. I did a video on the channel. You can go check that out from last set, and that I took to the Milwaukee DLC. The Sea Dogs deck was actually, I believe it had 2 top 8 finishes at that DLC, not by me. But it was a very powerful deck that was more of an aggressive combo deck. And this one takes sort of the controlling combo component out of it to just be really good at what it's really good at, which is going fast and putting sticky, annoying bodies on the field. So the way it's doing that is it's playing all of these copies of Lady and Tramp. This 1-drop Lady in particular is quite good for its ability to present a 0/3 that can grow whenever you play characters. It gets +1 attack for each character you play on a turn, and if it ever has 3 attack or more, it quests for 3 instead of just 1. So it's good for challenging little things in an aggro matchup. It's good for questing hard if you can find ways to buff it in a control matchup. So very flexible card. You also have Daisy Duck, the classic aggro monster. And then what you're doing is you're playing a lot of little things out in the first few turns, not taking quests unless you know that they will not be answered, because you're trying to get to turn 4 or 5 at the latest and play this 7-drop Tramp again, just like in our Big Dogs deck. We're playing this Tramp, but instead of us trying to fill the discard pile with targets for a Circle of Life, what we're trying to do with this Tramp is chain it into another Tramp or a Shift Lady, and then quest with everything else after having put all of that pressure onto the board. The other thing we can do is have it help us go find a Chromacon, depending on the matchup, if we believe it's a deck that is going to challenge our characters and not just like remove our characters with like bounce effects and things like that. The Chromacon being not so good into blue-green, it's okay, but not great. But if we think that it's going to be a deck like Purple Steel or a deck like Blurple, that is going to try to remove our stuff through banishing effects or damage dealing effects or challenging, then Chromacon is a fantastic way to slow your opponent down, give you plenty of time, because every time they banish something of yours on their turn, you get to bounce any card in play, yours or theirs. Sometimes you want to bounce theirs because you want to remove their answers for the future. Sometimes you want to bounce yours because you know that an exerted character of yours is going to get challenged and banished anyway, so you might as well bring it back to your hand and play it fresh the following turn. So that's basically what this deck is trying to do. And here's the interesting thing. It's pretty cheap already. This deck is like, I think, $115 or something like that. It's really not much. And that's mostly because these ladies have been between $5 and $10 a piece. This might even be closer to $100 at this point. But I've went ahead and shown you, hey, if you don't have these ladies and you don't want to spend between $5 and $10, depending on the metagame, we can build it without it. It's not that hard. In fact, there's some things that you can do that actually edge your matchups in different directions. We can add in the Rajas, which again work with the Pluto Raja combo. We can, of course, we can have the Mowglis and Ursulas again to disrupt your opponent's actions and songs in their hand. We're playing the same sort of stuff, and instead of the Daisy Ducks, which are between $5 and $10 as well, we've put in the Merfolks. So the Daisy Duck and the Lady being the only real expensive cards, we just change in for the powerful bodyguard that gives you a ridiculously good 1-2 punch, and the Cursed Merfolk, which admittedly is not as good as Daisy Duck in most circumstances. There are certain circumstances where your opponent is not playing a steel deck, but is playing a blue deck, and does not want to have to challenge this Merfolk because these blue decks can get really thin on cards. They never want to have to give up a card, but they can't really, they're going to have to challenge into this if they're not playing steel. So that is a budget deck that gets you at about $45. One of the best aggro decks in this format, in my opinion. Maybe the best. Amber Steel certainly would give it quite the run for its money, but Amber Steel has some expensive cards in it as well, and I think this is just a fantastic entry point. I also find this deck to be a lot more fun to play than Amber Steel, because while it is an aggro deck and it does play relatively straightforward, there is some intricacies around mathing out your turns and making sure you have enough ink in play to get the big cards out and onto the field, but you're not really ever trying to ink to 4 or 5 ink. You're trying to really stop your ink at around 3 and find ways to get your ladies and tramps in for cheaper, either shifting in your lady or waiting until your blue opponent ramps you up to 5 for you to play it, or of course getting a wide enough board that you can play this tramp with the discount. So that's the idea here with Budget Chroma Dogs. Let's go ahead and move on to the last of the meta decks that we're going to try to budgetize. Okay, Blue Steel. This probably seems absolutely crazy to anybody who's been on top of the meta, anybody who's been playing against this at League. This is one of the most expensive decks. It's one of the best decks in the format right now. How the heck are we going to budgetize it? Well, I'll be honest, it's not perfect. I've been spending a lot of time trying to help budgetize it because of some of the folks in our league. Shout out to Caleb, who's been working on building this. But he just joined Lorcana last set. He's trying to figure out how the heck can I build a powerful deck without having to break the bank, because there's just so much catching up to do, right? And you can't buy everything all at once. That's just crazy. And so we've been looking at this, and he had a lot of the Steel cards already because he played Amber Steel, so he had a lot of the early game songs, the early game Steel characters, right? And so it's like, okay, what do I do? Well, the good news, most of the cost is wrapped up in 2 or 3 cards. So this Cinderella is obviously the big one. And this Cinderella is what's helping break this archetype open, but the more I've been playing it, the more I'm convinced it's actually a different card that's breaking the archetype open to the high. This is just the most efficient thing in it. This is like $60. Maybe it's down a little bit. I haven't checked recently. This is like a $60 card. This is just ballooning the price of all blue decks right now. Then we have Namari. Namari's jumped between $15 to $25 just in this set as this deck has become meta. It was $15 before. Now it's jumped up to $25 because it's just such an efficient card for the list. Being able to slam a 2 questing, 5 body, and usually by the end of the game, bordering on irrelevantly large attack power. Like, as soon as you have 5+ cards in your discard pile, she's well worth the effect, but it's not even the extra attack that matters so much as her ability to, at the start of your turn, fix your hand state, draw a card, discard a card, because this deck is just trying to ramp on up to 6 ink as fast as possible, and then just play bombs for the rest of the game, right? The other big expensive card is the Goliath. And this is the other card that's really breaking it open. I think this is the card that, less so than Cindy, is the card that is defining the archetype. Cindy is just massively efficient, so of course it's really good for this deck. But the Goliath is the one that's defining the archetype because it's giving you something that, while the deck existed before, it didn't quite have, which is reliable card draw, the same term that you play it down, and it's a big body. You played other cards before, and we'll get into it, for reliable card draw, but they didn't have a big body. This does both. It also has a little bit of a hand management effect that it puts on your opponent, so that if your opponent can't remove it right away, they cannot end their turn with more than 2 cards in hand, which certain decks really, really hate. The last thing that's new is this Headless Horseman, which I also think is doing a lot of work in this archetype, but it's only super rare, so it's relatively affordable. And then the rest of these actions are pretty affordable. So what are we doing to make this budget? Okay, this is about $70. I think if you really like this game and you really want to work towards something meta, and you think you're going to open more packs, maybe pull some Goliaths, maybe borrow some from friends, right, to go to a tournament. Maybe you're going to save up your allowance and buy them on the weekend. Ask mom and dad, hey, mom and dad, can I get $30 to buy a Goliath? I actually think this is going to be a worthwhile investment to learn it. because once you get to 6 ink, the playlines don't change much. I mean, not really, right? So what I'm doing with this is we're going back to this Jasmine build that we saw on and off in the previous sets. Cindy's better. It's just true. Cindy is better because it's efficient, right? It's one card that you play on turn 4. It has the ramp effect guaranteed. It also fixes your hand a little bit. But that doesn't mean that we can't do what it's doing in other ways. What we're trying to do is ramp on 2 and then ramp again on 4 so that on our 4th turn of the game, we are able to play a 6-drop or higher. So what we've done here is we've leaned into this Jasmine. It's a shift 2. So we have the 1-drop Jasmine. You could play more, but I think, and I'll explain why, I think that's a little bit silly to play more because it waters like the deck down to the point where like you don't want to be drawing 1-drop Jasmines all game. We have the 1-drop Jasmine. One of our lines is to play a Jasmine on 1. On turn 2, we can shift the Jasmine. And then on turn 3, we'll play the Pleakley. That will ink both the big Jasmine and the little Jasmine, taking us up to 5 ink, and then we'll, on turn 6, draw, ink, and we'll have 6. We can play our 6-drop. Now, obviously, this Jasmine has some nice ability because when we shift it on that turn, if our opponent's not threatening anything, we can be questing with it and looking for allies. It's not a ton of them, but the ones that are in here are great. We have the Vincenzo, we have the Tinkerbell, we have Pleakley, and Tipo. It's not a bunch of them, but it's enough, and the ones that we're getting are pretty good, especially because these are giving you ramp. So you may not have Pleakley in hand when you get this Jasmine shifted on turn 2, but maybe you'll find it, or maybe you'll find a Tipo that will help you ramp. Alternate line is we go 1-drop or nothing on 1, Tipo on 2, and then on the following turn, we can either play Pleakley to ink the Tipo, thus getting us ramped to 5, because we would be on 4 ink playing this Tipo, ramp it. So that's getting us there. Or the Tipo can sing 1 jump ahead. Again, now we're still getting to that turn 4, 6 ink. Or we can play a Sail the Azurite Sea. Again, we can have Tipo on 2, and then on 3, play Sail. These are slower lines than just playing a Cindy, but not much slower, right? Because the Cindy doesn't present much of a threat in the first place. Now, the thing we're sacrificing is early game. You can take a look back at this one. We've got Captain Hooks and Mulans, and that is to be able to contest aggressive decks early. We have to sacrifice that in order to make room for the Jasmine and the Pleakley and the Jasmine, right? But I think that the ability to then still lean into what the deck is great at, which is to be dropping bombs from turn 4 on for the rest of the game, we can still do. And there's a few ways we can do that. Instead of the Goliath, we can play this Robin Hood. This was played in the previous set's build because it does a crappier version of what Goliath does. It comes in and draws a card most of the time. The other thing that's actually secretly nice about it is its ability to challenge evasive characters, which is something that is still worth doing because purple decks are still good and they're still playing these Genie, Dumbo, Elsa packages of a lot of evasives. So your ability to remove their Dumbos through challenging or their Genies through challenging can be very effective. We're still running the Tinkerbell and the Vincenzo and the Horseman because they're cheap. This is where most of the cost in this deck is coming in because these Hades are about like $6 or $7 a piece. They've been reprinted. They used to be like $25 a pop, but because of the reprint, they've now dropped all the way down to a really reasonable number. And again, just like I talked about in the previous decks with Elsa, just like I talked about with Doc, Hades is worth the investment. It will be a staple blue card for a very long time. So Hades feels like something that is worth picking up if this is a deck that you want to be playing. Now, we are hitting these bombs, Tink, Hades, Vincenzo, Horseman, and then we have a lot of other cards here to help. We have Develop and Sail. Again, the Sail and the 1-jump are the ramp. The Develop is consistency. If you get into the late game and you're top decking, there's so many big things you could be hitting. And if you can just see 1 or 2 more cards, like you can see with Develop, you're often going to find a Vincenzo, a Horseman, a Tink, a Robin, a Hades, whatever. So that is a really, really nice thing to be able to do. And then we get into our removal. We have 3 Thunderbolt, 4 Strength. Again, you could run 4 Thunderbolt. You just have to find a cut somewhere. But just like other decks, I don't like to have too many of these clunking my hand up early, especially since we don't have the Cinderella that can ink uninkable cards through its effect. We only have Tipo that can do that, so I don't want to have too many uninkable cards that can clunk your hand up when you're trying to start getting into your 6-ink bombs. And then we're running 3 copies of Beyond the Horizon. This is the contentious part. This can also be 3 copies of Doc. There's pros and cons. The Beyond the Horizon has the upside of being able to disrupt other control decks. It's a very, very powerful card, similar to Headless Horseman, that will help you win matchups against things like Baja Blast. And the ability to either dump your hand and draw 3, or dump your hand and draw 3 and make your opponent dump their hand and draw 3. The ability to choose and not just it automatically does both makes it a very flexible card as well. Now, the downside is it will clunk your hand, similar to I just talked about Thunderbolt, right? But if your meta game is filled with control decks, this is a really good option because of its ability to be, you can sing it with Hades and Vincenzo and Horseman, but really it's the ability to disrupt your opponent that makes this a powerful card. The argument for Doc is that you can clean it out of your hand in those early turns a little bit easier. There's worlds where like you played a Tipo and then on your next turn you're just gonna play a Sail and something else. You could just play a Sail, ink, play Doc, and heck, there may even be a world where you want to dump those cards and get 2 new cards because those cards just aren't any good, right? But even if you don't, you can still play it and not trigger it, and at least it cleans that card out of your hand so you don't get too stuck, right? And then of course top decking it in the late game is great because you can play it. It presents a body. You draw 2 more cards. So it's kind of better than Beyond the Horizon if you don't care about disruption. And the extra nice thing about it, specifically in this build, is because we're not playing Cindy and we are playing Jasmine, it is an ally, so Jasmine can find it. So all that to be said, you can kind of choose based on your local metagame or your preference if you want to play Beyond the Horizon versus Doc. They are both valid, I think, in the Jasmine build. Both are good choices. I think once you evolve past the Jasmine build, and that's why this base build I've included Beyond the Horizon. With no Jasmine, I don't think there's a good argument for Doc. If you put Cindy's in the deck, I think that you should always probably just play Beyond. But if you do play this Jasmine build as a placeholder while you build your collection and get started in the game, I think that you are probably going to be... There's going to be times where you're like happy that you're playing Doc and not Beyond the Horizon because of its, easier ability to be played and to be weaved in to other card effects. So this is the Budget Blue Steel, and that is the last deck I have today. I think in the next couple weeks I will be looking at some more experimental budget decks, things that are not quite meta-based, but instead are taking the game in entirely different directions and trying to catch your opponents by surprise. So stay on the lookout for that. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I know I'm always out there trying to help new players find lists that they can start with and then evolve as they get more and more into the game. So again, hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Consider subscribing, like the video, do all that good stuff that's going to tell the algorithm to feed us to more and more people. We just got over 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube page, which is so freaking sick. We're super stoked about it. And then of course, just keep the comments flowing. If you have ideas, suggestions, content you want us to tackle, topics, decks, anything you want us to see, let us know in the comments down below and we will make it happen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.